Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Leadership from the Heart. Today, I have with us Kae Williams. She is a global software marketing executive, coach, speaker, and soon to be, if not already, an author of Not Made for You. With over 30 years of experience rising from telemarketer to CMO in a male dominated industry, which we could talk a lot about, Kae is on a mission to help women thrive in systems that have never been built for them in mind. Through her personal stories of navigating and challenging biases, microaggressions, and exclusion, she empowers women to lead with authenticity, advocate for themselves, and to create an inclusive work experience that we all deserve. Kae, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm looking forward to our conversation, Romie.
Absolutely. Same. I would love to start with the book that we just talked about, Not Made for You. And what made you choose this title? Because it's pretty powerful.
Yes, it is powerful. I chose the title based on a conversation that I was having while I was writing the book, and it was actually with my niece. And we were discussing, and I talked to a lot of women over the years about this topic, and we were discussing the idea of trying to fit in
Mm,
and it not working.
mhm.
And that really that's what got me really started thinking about this system that we keep trying to fit into. And that's where the not made for you came from that conversation.
And what I would love to keep going into that because what does not made for you tell you? Like, what does it mean to you?
It means that there's systems that we've been, boy, I know for me, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've been trying to fit into this system for a while, or I was trying to. And then I recognized that there's this pattern that kept happening no matter what company or what department I was working in. So it wasn't that one company. I recognized it was a system. And when I really started to think about that, it was a system that was built many years ago, had nothing to do with us, but it was built by men for men, and they get the advantage of that system and we do not. And so I that's the importance to me of this system is that we have to recognize it for what it is, because a lot of times we have self-doubt. We think, I have so many women who have read my book and said, I always thought it was me. Like, what was I doing wrong? Why wasn't I communicating the right way, the way they wanted me to? Or they keep telling me I'm not strategic or I'm not ready. And it was this system that was built through a very biased lens, which was, again, for men. And it hasn't caught up. That system has not evolved with our culture and what we see, the diversity that we see in the corporate world.
Yeah, I think the evolution part of it not having caught up yet is I think you hit the nail on the head there because I don't well, I do think that it was built that way on purpose, but I don't think it was built that way. At least my lens wasn't necessarily to exclude women, although we were never part of the equation because we weren't working at the time, right? We
That's
were
right.
at home. And now that we are working and included, they just haven't figured out, just like medicine, right? Like medicine was all built for men and tested on men and never on women. And now we're realizing, like, oh shit, maybe their bodies do act different, you know?
Right. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I like that. I really like that that lens that you're bringing. Like, it's not that you're excluded; it's just that they never built it with you in mind, which is very cool.
Yes, and I think it's important for women to recognize women and other people. It's not just women, right?
Of
There's a lot
course.
of people of color, men of color that have read the book or I've talked to about it and said, I had the same experiences as women, right? So it's anybody who's been othered, any marginalized group. But I think we have to recognize it for what it is,
Hmm.
because we're struggling to fit in and to get our advancements and promotions through the same way that these men do. And it doesn't work. And so a lot of women get dismayed and they actually leave these industries. And great, they start their own businesses, but we need women in these industries helping build products for all of us, right? And so that's why I really want to get the message out to help. There are strategies that we can employ to be successful despite these systems.
Yeah, and not to give your book away, but what is the strategy if you had to pick one? What would the one be that you would give the audience?
It's to recognize the bias, because it can be quite subtle and it happens frequently. Recognize what it is. And the book gives examples. That's why I tell my stories and other people's stories. So you can see how it may show up for you at work, because sometimes it's so subtle, we don't recognize it, or we don't recognize how important it is and how it's discrediting us in rooms.
Mm.
And so I'd say recognize it, name it, and then address it.
That's good. That's really good. And so you came from they're all male dominating industries, at least most of them are, telemarketing to CMO. What defining moment in your journey tested you the most and shaped you into like what you are today or who you are today?
There isn't one. It was this pattern that I started to recognize. I mean, you get all these slights, right? Oh, make sure you smile, or you're not ready, you're not strategic enough, or there's a lot of microaggressions, and we can talk about those that I certainly faced as a woman of color in this industry. So there was not just one defining moment for me. It was a pattern that I saw over and over. But I think I started to recognize that what I was seeing, the people that were getting promoted and the story that I was being told of why they got promoted didn't match with the evidence, right? So that they were performing at a better pace, or they had better results than I did, or they were more strategic than I was, or other people that I've noticed. So that just wasn't matching up for me. And that happened over and over again. And so that was when I started to realize something's amiss here. And I am very ambitious, and how do I still have a successful career? So I started to employ different strategies. I do talk about those in the book and happy to talk about them here, but I started to employ different strategies or test them to see how can I work around some of these barriers so that I can still have a career and enjoy the work that I'm doing.
It's the game, right?
It
And
is.
it's the game. And like, to tell people all the time, because, as a woman of color as well, like people are always like, they always ask the same questions that we always get asked. And I said, it's just a game, guys. If you learn the rules, you can go as far as you want because you're in the game, and you're not, to your point of like, we're not trying to fit in the game, but we're going to be a player for
Yes,
sure.
that's
Right?
right.
Like you're not a pawn anymore. You're going to be a player. And I think that that's when people realize that, and I'm so glad you wrote this book. It's like you get to see the rules and now you have the cheat codes,
Yes.
because you can move according to how they're moving, and you're almost a little bit more intelligent because you have like the inside story on it.
And I love that you say it's a game, because for me now, and certainly not when I was younger and starting my career, it affects you differently, I think, than when
100%.
you are, as you move up in your career or in years of experience, and certainly as you start to recognize the bias. But it is a bit of a game. And for me, I love reading a room. I find that quite fascinating. And
Yeah.
it is one of the skills and the strategies that I talk about in the book is you have to learn to read a room. And so I love sitting in a meeting and like who's the one that's getting talked over, who's the one that everybody's listening to. And it's not always the highest title
Right.
either, right?
Right.
So we have those are the things that we have to start recognizing. And it is just business, or it is just a game. And if you think of it that way, you can take the emotions out, but
Mm.
then you can still respond and articulate your boundaries when it's required without having all that emotion behind it.
Right. And if we're being honest, right, I think that that's the piece that the the male dominated industries, they have a hard time of, I don't want to say accepting, but it's tough for them as well because their emotions are looked at differently than ours, right? That's why women get called a bitch or we're aggressive or we're all these things. Where if a man said it, you'd be like, yeah, that's right. And so,
Yes.
I think that when we have there's so much behind the woman in the workplace and how we come across. And I think that they too have a hard time accepting our emotions when we have them, and they don't know where to put it. They just want to fix you so that you can go do your thing, or it triggers them in a way. So it's, I think both sides have so much to learn. And I think that the men and woman dynamic in the workplace could be such a beautiful dynamic if both accept what it is and their role.
And I've experienced that, right? So, which is nice. So that gives me hope, right? I've experienced for the first time, it was one company ago, I experienced where there were equal men and women. Actually, at first, there were equal men and women on the executive team. Now, typically, I am the only female on the executive team for most of my career, but this was equal men and women. And then at one point, it was more women than men. And I recognize that as they start to work, all of this is just exposure. As they start to work with you and get to know you, they started to respect
Yes.
our experience and skill and expertise in our departments. And it was a beautiful thing. We all still keep in touch with each other because we know it was special.
Exactly.
We know it was special.
It's
And
magic.
so, what I say to men is that have to understand that our work experience is very different than theirs. Ours comes with a lot of emotional toll from past experiences and current ones that are happening on a daily basis in these rooms. And it's not, we don't get just to come to the room and talk strategy and make a decision. We're thinking about, is it okay for me to speak? What should I say? How is it going to be interpreted, right? We have all these things we're thinking, not just what we're going to say or just sharing our ideas openly. There's a lot more behind our thoughts than I believe men have. They can come in, they have immediate credibility in the room, they say something and everyone's like, that's amazing, John, right? When we say something, they're like, maybe. John, what do you think? Right? So it's always that slight. And that takes a lot of emotional toll on us, aside from the work we have to do at home or the responsibilities we have at home as mothers. I am not a mother, but I've worked with a lot of women who are moms, and I have sisters are working mothers. There's a lot of responsibility that they have outside of work, and it's not like they can just drop it when they come into the office door, right? That's still on their mind. Not that men don't have that as well, but we have that plus everything else that's happening in the room.
Yeah, yeah. And the, you just mentioned, when a woman says something and then the men check with the men to see what they think, that's a real thing. And it could, if you let it, um, diminish what you think you just said instead of standing on it, and I love that you brought that up because, those are the small ways that they don't even realize. They don't even realize, most of them. Some of them do, and they're doing it
Some of
tactfully.
them do.
Yeah.
Yes, sure.
And, it's just, if so, in the company that I work for, we have like a women's program, and it's not just for women. Like, they invite executive men into the room because it's going to take both of us to acknowledge and to realize. And the men in the room were shocked at the stories,
Yes.
like, they had no idea. So to me, that's what opened my eyes years ago, that it's just a lack of awareness and care, right? Because you have to be, once you're aware, you have to add the care, but it
Right.
was a really good, for me, lesson to see. It's not even in their reality what we go through.
And why would it be? Because it's not happening to them, right? I mean, that's the thing. I love that the women's group that you work in, that they invited the men in, because that's something that I'm trying to do when I'm speaking, is getting men in those rooms as well so they can understand. Because I do think the majority of men, when they recognize it or they're told about it, I think they really will try hard to behave differently. Not that they're going to slip up, but they will try hard to behave differently. One of the things that I say when we have to advocate for ourselves, like we said, if we're saying something in a room or have an idea and somebody else has to validate that idea all the time, you should go speak to that person who's asking the other person and say, hey, I'm not sure if you're aware, but every time you ask me something and I give you a response, you go and validate it with Jeff.
Mhm.
Why is that?
Yeah.
It's important to ask that question because they may say, well, I needed more data or they had more experience in this. And it may be valid feedback or it may not be. And if they say, no, I don't do that, you should say, yes, you do. And here's when you did it. And I'd really appreciate it if you and I engage the same way you engage with Jeff. Because if you don't say that, you are being devalued in that room. Somebody else is taking your ideas. And when it comes time for promotion, the person who's getting the promotion is the ones that they believe had the ideas in that room. And that was Jeff, not me.
Yeah.
So we can't let those things go. It's how you handle it. It's always professional. It's always calm. And it's just a matter of bringing awareness to them. They may not change right away, but they're going to be aware of what they did. Unless they're purposely doing it, that's a different situation. For most men, it is not on purpose.
I agree with that statement, 100%. And I agree, calling it out in such a strategic way is where the money is, because you're right. He has one of two answers. Either Jeff has more data, or I don't even know that I'm doing that, but
Yeah.
like, thanks for letting me
Yes.
know, because yeah, yeah, yeah.
And there could be an immediate denial of it because they might be embarrassed or whatever, and let them deny.
Exactly. That their denial does not diminish what your truth is.
No, and what you just said. You still state what you said. Who cares if they deny it? Just say, well, I just want you to know this is what you're doing. And
Yeah.
they can deny it all they want,
Yeah.
right? And most people won't. Most people will feel really badly about it, I think.
Yeah, if you do it correctly, right? Like in a
Yes.
private, calm, like you said.
Yes. Not confrontate. There's no reason to be confrontational about any of these unless it keeps getting repeated. Then I'd get a little bit more direct.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. What is the lie that we often tell women about how to succeed in these environments? I know you've been through, I'm sure, ageism, microaggressions, there's sexism, there's all the things. And I would love to know your thoughts on the lie that we tell women, that that's what it takes to be successful.
Yes. So if we think about, we get out of school, high school, college, or whatever, and we're ambitious and we're really excited to start our careers. We're really excited just to make money, frankly, because we're so poor from going to college. For the ones I remember that going, I cannot wait to get a job. Little did I know. And so we're very excited. And I think as women of color, I know my father told me, you're a black person and and you have to work twice as hard. And he told me and my sisters that. So I had some expectation of it being harder, but I didn't have the understanding how frequently it would happen. And I think a lot of women go into these jobs thinking, just here's the lie, that you can go into the job and just work hard and the promotions will come. But that's not what drives promotions. It's influence and visibility. And in these systems, the men have the advantage there because they are sponsored and supported more than women are. So that's the lie. And we have to understand what that looks like, how they get their influence, and how do we get our influence? How do we build networks and relationships when we're not invited to those after work events where you get a little tidbit of information or you get to smooze with an influential person in the company or you get a special project, right? We're not always included in that. So how do we still build those relationships with the right people so we can get promoted as well? So that's where the lie is, that you're just going to come in and you're going to do your job and you're going to work hard. You don't have to deal with politics or any of those things. We're not recognizing that the definition of leadership has a filter, and the filter has the bias. The filter has and the bias is, if we think about a leader of a country, of a big corporation, we're going to think a white male.
Mm,
All of us are going to think that. And so businesses think that as well. And we have to recognize those decisions about promotion or special project are typically going through that biased lens.
right.
And so how do we get around that?
Yeah. So how do we get around that?
So the way I've gotten around it is I knew that I had to build relationships differently because I wasn't going to always be invited to those after work events or that conversation about sports in the hallway that turns into a business conversation, right? And they're just casually conversing with each other, because like people converse with and build relationships with people like them, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's not uncommon. So what I started to do was, and I actually found that it works better. I had to build relationships one-on-one with people at work. And I started doing it through collaborating. In marketing, I'm in marketing. So we have to collaborate with a lot of departments anyway, so it makes it easier. But I would start to build relationships with different departments, different people, different levels, doesn't matter, but certainly the influential ones as well. And saying, look, I'm working on this project. I need your help or your team's help, or, hey, I'd love to run this by you, get your idea. And I started to build rapport with these people. And what I realized is the bias that they hold then about a woman or a woman of color gets diminished as they get to know me better. They start to see my work. They start to understand how I think. Then they realize she is strategic. She is intelligent, whatever it is. And they start to advocate for you in rooms when you're not even there. Okay, Kae showed me this project she was working on. I think it's really important here in this conversation. Let's talk about it. Or maybe we should invite Kae into the next meeting and have her present that project. So that's the way I got around it, was building one-on-one relationships and breaking down that bias of what women are and
Yeah.
how we work.
Yeah, I had the gift early on of being ignorant towards all of that. I had no idea that there were biases and that I was looked at a certain way. And so I'm a high collaborator naturally. And thank God, because I do feel like I feel exactly what you said, because I was able to build relationships without the awareness of,
That's
are they
good.
looking at me different? I didn't know any of that. I remember the first time I was asked a question, I was just like, huh, you think they look at me different? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, well, I am completely unaware of it. But I do feel like as a high collaborator, building relationships has been exactly what you just said, right? You're invited into the room, you're invited for perspective, you're all these things. And if you are aware, then for sure you have to read Kay's book so that you could see it for what it is. And if you're unaware, like me in the beginning of my career, thank goodness for the first at least 10 years, then, being a collaborator and not shying away from that is the way. You have to
Yes.
build a relationship. You
Right.
have to.
And you have to, I think I saw something on one of your TikToks about you have to be a great leader, you have to like people.
That was
That's
yesterday.
key.
I
That's a big
can't
part of it.
tell
It
you
makes it
enough.
easier.
And how many leaders do we know are leading because they're climbing the ladder and because they want the money, and it has nothing to do with people?
That's right. Yes,
And
that
and
happens a
it
lot.
breaks my heart.
Yes. And we're setting them up for failure, and we're setting up their teams for failure. And I have this conversation a lot with people that we often reward somebody for doing a great job by making them a manager of people. And number one, they may not be a great manager of people. And number two, we put them in that position, but we don't train them to be a good leader. And being a good leader isn't just about results, right? It's empathy, understanding how to create these safe, collaborative environments within your team. And we don't teach that enough.
You ever watch someone get promoted and think they really have no idea what's coming? I've been that person. I've led that person. And I've watched brilliant new leaders fall short, not because they're not capable, but because no one ever told them what to stop doing, what to start doing, or how to start thinking like a leader instead of just doing more. That's why I built New Leader Acceleration Program. It's a leadership orientation that no one ever gives, but everyone wish existed. So if you're tired of watching new leaders get thrown into the deep end, this is your lifeline. Just click the link in the show notes or head to our website, which is leadershipfromtheheart.co/NLAP. And let's raise the bar together on purpose. We don't. My main program is that to be a mentor for all new leaders when they come into leadership, because I had a mentor, thankfully. I had several mentors early on. And when I'm asked about success, I'm like, oh, well, I don't know what it would have looked like had I not had people helping me navigate through these challenging times. And I say it's like when you enter the sixth grade, it's the hardest year because you spent your first 10 years of life with your parents, and then elementary school having your hand held, and then you get dropped into sixth grade, and now you've got you've got six periods to go to, and you've got to
That's
find
right.
your classroom.
Yes.
And you're just like, sixth grade was like the worst and the best year because it was a year of independence, but it was also like you have to figure it out. And so I say, when you go from a frontline to leader, it's the sixth grade all over again because they're
A
gonna
great
look at
analogy.
you differently just
Yes.
because you're a company person now.
Yes.
And you don't know how to navigate that because I was just your peer. And
Yes.
now I have to tell you what to do with love and directness. And so for me, like my give back to the world is just, I want to be that place where you get to say all the things of what leadership is like, because it could be very scary in the beginning and
Yes.
challenging. And we don't teach it. We don't teach it. And it's on us. It really is on us for not
Yeah.
teaching it, for sure.
Teaching it and leading by example, like being a good leader teaches the people that work for you
Hmm.
how to be a good leader. Because I've learned leadership through great leaders and some really horrible ones as well, right?
Yes.
You
Yes.
learn what not to do.
I don't want to be like that.
Thankfully, most of my career, I've had some really excellent leaders and great advocates for me. Same that you said, I was really fortunate to find. And there weren't these formal mentorship programs. I did have one which was disastrous, and I talk about that in the book, but most of them were not formal and just people reaching out and, like I do, like you do, trying to help the next person, like not just get yourself in that room, bring other people with you.
Yes, yes, that's the whole point, and someone saw something in me early on that I didn't even know was in me, and that drew out, and I was able to, what I call, borrow their courage, borrow their, what they saw in me because I couldn't see it, and I borrowed theirs until I saw it. And then
Yes.
little by little you start to, and honestly, my mentors were all middle-aged white men who saw something in me that
The
years
majority of
too.
mine were men. There was probably one woman. The majority of
Yeah,
the majority of my bosses were white men because, especially as I became an executive, right? Because they're, not all, but the
yeah,
majority of them were
yeah.
men. Yeah.
Yeah. So for the ambitious woman out there who's been trying to knock down these walls and break the ceiling and has been labeled difficult, what strategies would you give her to help her actually knock down these doors without, by not by herself, like get the help?
It's clarity. When somebody says you're being difficult, or, I was always told I was being intimidating. And I knew that was because of the color of my skin, that was just a bias, right? And I am direct for sure, but I don't think I'm intimidating. And so, getting clarity around what does that mean when you say I'm too direct? What does that look like in every day? I want to understand where you saw me being direct, or if I need to be more strategic, or I'm not ready. What does that look like in every day to be ready or to be strategic? You want answers. You don't want vague feedback or vague comments. It just doesn't help you grow.
That's money right there.
And it's
That's
just the
so,
simple of, tell me what that looks like in the day to day. That's all you have to ask.
because they probably don't even know either.
No, because they're just saying words. They're just saying the words that they've heard, or they know, well, you're not strategic enough. They're making things up. And if you call them on it, then they have to think about it.
Yeah.
I want an answer. I want to know, what
Yeah.
are the steps I need to take
Yeah.
in the day to day to
Mm,
get to the next level.
mm,
Let's spell it out. Let's put a plan together.
mhm. Yeah. That's good. That's really good. Mhm.
And the other
Takes
part of
courage.
that is, being labeled difficult. The other part is the awareness, as we said, recognize where it's coming from.
Mhm.
It's a system we're living in, that they're living in and working in. It's not you. Don't go to the self doubt first.
100%. Like, don't take yourself out before the world does, right? Like,
Recognize it for what it is.
mhm.
And it's just somebody's opinion. Doesn't mean it's right,
Yeah.
right? All this is very subjective. Even if you think about reviews, and I've had reviews. I always had excellent reviews. And then I got, and this was a woman, unfortunately, I got the first time I got a meets in my whole career. I have never had a meets ever except for this one time. Even now, I mean, well, I don't get reviewed that way anymore, but, and I was like, what? I knew it was so subjective, right? It was just this weird thing. And I called her on it. Like, I don't agree with this or this. So let's discuss these two areas that I want you to understand. Let me tell you from my perspective what I think was happening here. And I'd love to hear yours. I mean, those are the conversations you just have
Just
to
a
have.
conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that like I know for me, I don't ask enough questions. Well, I actually kind of do, but I can see where I didn't ask the questions and I just believed whatever they said off the cuff, primarily because I didn't want to know what they thought, right? Like I was afraid of like their definition of it or whatever it is. So, I want to encourage the listeners that it takes courage to ask these questions, and ask
It
them in a
does.
poised manner where
Yes.
you're not scattered and you're just, you're centered and you're just wanting more information.
You want clarity. And that if they say that they think that you're being abrasive or hostile in asking these questions, you can just call and say, no, actually, I'm just looking for clarity because I really am trying to grow. I'm trying to understand. Help me understand.
Yeah. And also call out what they may be feeling, right? Like I know that this may be uncomfortable for you
Yes.
because I'm asking you questions, but I really just want to know for my own edification. And
Right. Yeah, but you have to, and as we have to have difficult conversations or feel comfortable with being uncomfortable
yes.
as you move up in leadership. As you're managing people. There are some conversations you have to have with your employees, with your peers, with your boss, with a vendor. And sometimes they're uncomfortable, but
Yeah.
that's okay. It's about getting clarity, and you have to think of it that way. You're not being a jerk, right? You're not trying to hurt somebody's feelings. You are just trying to get clarity.
Right. And only you know your intentions, right? And
Yes,
so you have to check your intentions. If you are trying to be aggressive in that, only you know what you're actually doing. And I think that that's the difference between, manipulation and not manipulating is your intention behind it. But I agree with asking the question and being okay with whatever the answer is, because the answer doesn't have to necessarily impact you, especially if you know for you, like I'm not aggressive. I'm
that's right.
just direct. I
Right.
know who I am. So, the
And we
fact
have
that
to be
you feel that
honest. We have to be honest with ourselves because, if you're not getting a great review and you weren't working hard,
that's what I mean.
right?
Like, right.
Right. Or you know that you're lacking in some area of skill in your career or in your profession, you have to be aware of that and honest with yourself
Mhm,
about that
mhm.
before you're having these conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. For those who say, or for those who are unfamiliar for what inclusion means, what would your definition of inclusion be?
An inclusive environment. So to me, an inclusive environment is where you see people that, I mean, some of it's the obvious ones, right? You see people that look like you
Hmm.
in all levels. You feel comfortable in your domain, solving problems you feel empowered to solve problems in your domain. You feel valued in your opinions. You feel comfortable asking questions outside of your domain. You feel comfortable and safe doing that.
Mm,
You feel that you have influence.
hmm.
You
Hmm.
feel safe to speak and share ideas, even if they're not in agreement with somebody else.
Yeah.
That's inclusivity. Aside from the things that we all know, as I said, the diversity pieces of inclusivity.
Yeah, when you were saying that, I was thinking about there's what I believe, and I don't think I've ever said this out loud, but there's what I believe to be a very, I don't know if I should call it a response, but I seem to observe a lot of leaders, more old school leaders, put people in what I call the ice box when they're upset with them or when they've done something that they don't necessarily like. And so now we're not being inclusive because I want you to know that I'm mad at you. And so if I'm mad at you, that I'm going to isolate you and treat you differently for X amount of time just so you know. What one, have you experienced that? And two, what would you call that and how do we navigate through that?
I have experienced it. I think we all have, because we get some inexperienced leaders sometimes, and that is not an uncommon behavior for them. I would hit that head on. I might not have done that when I was younger, but I'm just telling you what I would do now.
And so what does that look like?
In a nice way, I would
Yeah.
have a conversation saying, I feel that you are,
Mm,
there's this, you're avoiding me, or you're not including me in conversations like you used to. And I believe it's because of this conversation that we had, or this decision that you made or I made, and you and I didn't agree on it. I really like us to, let's talk about that, because I want us to get back to where we were, because it only benefits us and the business if we're able to work well together. When you come across more professional and more mature and understanding the business than they do, for the most part, they are going to back down.
right. Yeah, and if people could realize, like, there's this tinge of expectation that because we're leaders, that like things shouldn't bother us, or we're not human almost, right? And I don't want to say, like, if your leader puts you in an ice box, they just don't know how to navigate their own feelings about whatever they're feeling about you. So yes, what Kay said is right. Like, approach it in the most professional, mature way possible, because they too want to get back to you. They just don't know how
Right.
until enough time passes, or a what do you call that when you do like a gesture to say like an olive branch or whatever. And then now we start almost like any other relationship, romantic or platonic, but we could close the gap really quickly if we just say, hey, I feel like you're feeling, the story that I'm telling myself is that you're upset because of this conversation we may have had. And I just want to talk through it because I don't want there to be a gap. We're much stronger together than we are with this space in between us. And because as leaders, we need help too, being called out. Like I tell my team all the time, call me out on my bullshit, guys. Like, you have to. I'm just a human too. I've had blind spots. I'm unaware. And so if I make you feel away, you know my heart, and you know that I don't want to make you feel bad or whatever. And like, just come see me, come talk to me, and I'll
Yeah.
acknowledge it.
I think it's important that you have that conversation, as as we've been talking about, because you never know what's going on with that other person anyway. You might be interpreting it completely wrong. You might be, right? And that happens. We
It
do.
happens all the time.
They got other things going on in their life, right? So opening that up in a kind way to have that conversation,
Sure.
I think is the right thing to do. When people are afraid to do that, you should remember is they may be your leader, or it may be somebody a higher title, but we're all human beings. We're human beings. They make mistakes. We make mistakes. They don't have a privilege of that behavior just because of their title. We're all in this trying to figure things out. We're so afraid sometimes to speak in these rooms or speak to somebody because of their title.
Yes.
And the reality is, even the CEO is there just to figure things out. That's why we're here. That's why they hired us. We don't have it all figured out. They didn't hire somebody because they know the exact answer for that business or that situation. It's impossible to have that. So if we recognize that, it's another human being in front of you. Now, if they really do that a lot more, even after you talk to them about it, that's a different situation, right?
Yeah.
Because now they're creating this environment this untenable situation for you. Then there's other things you have to do. But for the most part, I think it will break down that hostility or defense or whatever it is that you're experiencing from them if you just talk to them about it.
Right. Which leads us into, how do you know when it's time to walk away?
If you are in a company that you are not learning, you don't feel valued, you don't have any influence, and you don't find a career path, or you don't feel that there's a career path, that alone should tell you that maybe this isn't the right place for you, or it's not the right manager.
Mm,
If it's just that you and your boss didn't agree on something and now you're in this weird space. That takes more, give the person the benefit of the doubt and have that conversation. Or if the company isn't a toxic culture, like try and help fix the situation as employees. All of us, we're all employees. Let's try and fix the situation. But if you are in a very toxic environment, it is not just your manager. That is the way, that is the behavior of the company. And those other things that I said about learning and career paths and being seen and valued, then it's time to reconsider if that's the right environment for you.
Right. Structure, culture means a lot.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? What does culture mean to you? What is your, and I should ask, but first, what does culture mean to you?
To me, well, that's a tough one because and you're asking for me, but everybody has their different view of culture. My view of culture is what I had said a little bit earlier, is that I am valued. I feel comfortable making decisions in my domain. I feel comfortable questioning somebody else's domain. I feel seen. I have influence. I see a career path. That to me is part of culture. And also the accountability
Hmm.
of behavior,
Hmm.
bias, all of those things is at every level, not just you guys have to behave okay, but up here we don't have to behave okay, right? That's a big part for me of culture.
Yeah. Yeah, that's big. And as you do climb, there are privileges as they should be, there's a reason why they're in that role, you would think, other than, them just being placed there. But, and that's okay too, that's just the higher you climb, the more opportunities and privilege you have. And I think it's okay. It's part of the politics. And as long as you, like you said, accountability is being held at the standard that we've established for everyone, I
That's
think
right.
that's perfectly fine.
Yes.
I don't mind you having X as long as I know that you too are responsible the same way I am for this, whatever we're
We're
holding.
right. You're following the culture and guidelines of the company and policies like everybody else.
Right.
That's important at every level.
Yeah. And creating, what I found is even if the company, and, maybe not completely, but even if the company is not as inclusive, you as a leader get an opportunity to be inclusive, right? You don't have to just follow the grain. What I have found is like my department is always treated the way that I want to be treated,
I
because
agree.
I have the power as a leader to cultivate within me, like around me, whatever I want to see and feel and do. Now, beyond me, I may not have that, but like from me, you're going to get safety, you're going to get inclusion, you're going to get all the things that I want, and then, hopefully, we see the fruits of that labor and it's always been a positive one. But that's honestly a thing that I think that as women, we get to do and we get to do it well.
Yes. And I love that you said that because all this conversation about getting rid of DEI and all of those things. And my thought was those were very performative statements, and we know that. But as individuals, I always have a diverse team for the most part, depending on what location in the country and all of those things. But I try very hard to have a diverse team of people, and I make sure it's a safe space that they feel heard, they feel visible. I let them know I don't know everything. We will figure things out together. We will collaborate and have conversations. I am not making all the decisions for us. That's not how I operate at all. And you can build those within your organization. And I've been in companies where my team was known for that and people envied the team and they wanted to replicate that within their organization. And that's what that's how we grow these. If it's not coming from the top down, that we can build it from the bottom up.
It always takes you. And I think that that's what I want people to know the most is always like, it can come from you. You may not have been given it, but it can come from you. Absolutely. You can cultivate whatever environment you want. And like you said, same. People are like, I would love to work for Romie. And I'm like, well, you could, or you can create that where
In
you
your,
are.
that's right.
You can create that where you are. So then people could want to do, and the more of us that actually start to just do that, you're unstoppable.
I enjoy the conversation.
Yeah. If you were to leave the listeners with one action that they could take this week to be more inclusive or heart driven, what would it be?
Be human. We learn this as a young age, right? Treat others like the way we want to be treated.
Yes.
Be human.
With that means like messy mistakes,
All of it.
fixing, putting it back together, like all of it.
All of it. Yes.
All of it.
Yes.
I love that. Be human. Be human. Yes. Where can people find you?
You can go to my website, which is kaewilliams.com, and that's Kae Williams.com. And in there, I have a link to where you can buy the book because it's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, etc. And there's also links to my social media. So I do have these conversations on LinkedIn and Instagram and Substack as well.
Very cool. Very cool. I feel like this is going to be an ongoing conversation for us.
Yes.
Right? Because I feel like we did not. I think we're at like level 1 of the onion.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yes. I think you're right. Yeah.
No, but that's cool because this is just the beginning of just being honest about things. And I feel like this is such a genuine conversation we had about what's really happening out there. And it's not fluff, it's real, and how to get through it. So I appreciate your contribution to making us a better leader and helping women understand that it's not what it may seem.
And thanks for having me here, because this is my goal of writing the book, was to get in front of women and other people, all marginalized people, to have these conversations to help them find a joyful career and a successful one. So thank you for having this platform that allowed me to come in and speak to you about this today.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you so much. And with that, guys, we're going to end the episode. All of Kae's links will be in the show notes, especially where to find her book. I think it's going to be a big one for us to read and think strategically through how to get through these things that may trigger us. And yet we don't even know why they're triggering us. But if we call it out, I know for me, that's a big one of just calling it out and being open to hearing what the answer is, if there is an answer. So all of her stuff will be in the show notes. And I hope that you reach out to her, follow her, give her a subscription in Substack or wherever she might be found. And until next time, we'll talk later. See you guys. I'm going to hit stop. Wanna hear you go.